Good evening, and welcome to Nation Watch for this evening. Thank you very much for joining us. My name is Randolph Pritchell. I'm joined in studio by Mr. Marvin Williams, Central Executive Member of the PNCR. Of course, we're happy to have you here this evening. We're going to be discussing, of course, the state of affairs in the country coming out of Sugate, coming out of rising cost of living, a number of other things happening in our country. We want to ensure that you're part of the conversation also. So as we get the program started, folks, you can get into the comment section and let us know where you're joining us from. Let us know where you're joining us from. We will be having a good discussion. We're supposed to be joined by some other persons out of studio, but they'll be coming in and they'll be sharing their thoughts with you this evening as we discuss. Mr. Williams, good evening to you. How are you doing?
How you doing, Randy? Thanks for having me.
Great, man, great. We're going to be having some interesting discussions this evening as we allow more persons to join the live stream. If you're looking at the live stream, share the live stream. Tell your friends that Nation Watch is on, and we're going to be having lots of interesting discussion this evening. Marv, I know we want to get into the discussion very quickly, but I know lots of things have been happening over the last few weeks in Guyana, and the whole country is abuzz about one particular thing, and we're going to start there in just a few. But I want to give you an opportunity to open our discussion this evening, even as we wait for persons to join, and we hope the persons are sharing the live stream. Give you an opportunity to open discussion. Your thoughts generally on the state of affairs as it is, general, not in any specific way. What letter grade would you give the PPP thus far?
Randy, you put me in a spot there because I remember former Prime Minister Moses Nagamutu gave them an F in everything. And I don't think I can change that grade.
Mm-hmm.
There's an F in everything.
Yeah.
I want to start out by citing Mr. George Orwell to set the tone for this conversation.
Mm-hmm.
George Orwell is on record as having said that all tyrannies must rule through fraud and force. But once fraud is exposed, they must rely exclusively on force. So it appears to me that fraud having been exposed, corruption having been exposed and magnified before the eyes of every Guyanese citizen, and by extension the rest of the world, that Guyana might be heading down a slippery slope where additional force may now come into play. Already we see the issue with the Stabrook News coming under pressure from the Guyana police force because a member of the executive felt that some documents that were obtained may have been documents that were allegedly stolen from a particular place, and the police became involved. Now, we're talking about documents here that can be obtained by any citizen of this country. As long as you're of sound mind, you can go into the registrar of joint stock companies and you can get those records.
Yeah.
So the fact that a little issue like that could be blown to that kind of really, really horrible looking and sounding proportions suggests that we are going to the next level. We are moving from the exposition of fraud to the next level of Orwell's pronouncement.
Yeah, definitely. And we're going to come back to that, this idea of force being used. But let's get into the specifics of the biggest issue of the day. And I want us to have a conversation, folks who are joining us out there. Thank you very much for joining the live stream. Share the live stream. Let your friends and family know that Nation Watch is on, and we're going to be having some interesting discussion. We're going to be unpacking some issues that you may not have even realized. So share the live stream and get on board. Let's have this conversation this evening about the state of affairs of Guyana, as our program is titled Guyana in Crisis under the PPP. Now, as I said, we have in studio with us Mr. Marvin Williams, and Marvin and I will be having this discussion. Now let's get into it. Sugate, as they're calling it, the revelation of what really
office
on the underbelly, so to speak, of this corrupt PPP. today I saw an interesting cartoon. You know, Mr. Harris always never fails to bring out the true sense of what is happening. And he had a football field.
Yep.
And you know, when you're setting up for play football, you put the people in the position, and all the positions were filled with Jagdeo.
Yep.
And I harken back to a tweet by Nazima Ragabir, who said, look how easy it was for a sitting minister, well, not a sitting minister, senior member of the cabinet, to entertain and invest in his home, in his private residence, and give them all assurance that he is going to do this when investment is not even on his portfolio. I saw him come out and he tried to defend portfolio. But what are your thoughts on this Sugate? What did it really reveal to the Guyanese people?
To me, it is alarming. It is alarming that we are where we are. Yes. Not surprising, but alarming. Now, there are institutions in this country which are tasked with some very, very important functions. The Go Invest, for example, is a state agency that addresses and treats with the question of investment, whether it be local or international.
Yes.
That apparently does not work, does not function. And you know that there were stories in the media way back with some house somewhere and with cameras set up and all of these fancy things, and they implicated two leading players.
Mm-hmm.
Now, in addition to that, there is obviously the National Procurement and Tender Administration Board.
Yep.
That entity is responsible for dealing with tenders, whether it be the sale of state land, the awarding of contracts, or whatever it is. I read today that Mrs. Su had a memorandum of understanding for the development of a hotel.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Then, of course, there are other institutions that treat with this thing. There's the Ministry of Foreign Affairs that deals with whatever international relations issues arise in terms of foreign investment potentials.
Mm-hmm.
Inquiries are channeled there. They facilitate whatever engagements are necessary with the other institutions that give life to these proposals.
Yeah.
And of course, there's the Ministry of Finance that treats with some aspects of investment. There is the Guyana Revenue Authority, which also is involved in these things. There are other state agencies.
Yeah.
Now,
so you circumvent all of those institutions, and he has become essentially the man that you have to go to. And these are not our words. This is what the Su was telling the people who were looking to invest, that if you want anything done, you got to do it this particular way.
What is horrifying, though, is the Su's position that it comes with a cost.
Yep.
So I don't know what cost is attached to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and its involvement in investment opportunities. I don't know what costs are associated with the Go Invest and all these agencies. But when you listen to the recording and you understand that this gentleman is talking about, what did he term it? A service charge?
Processing fee.
Processing fee.
Processing fee.
Now, how can an individual, one human being, take charge of the performance of the functions of the offices of all of these state agencies, remove it from his official office, take it to his home? Guyana is in very, very serious trouble. Now you have mega investments coming to this country with the newly discovered wealth that we have.
Yes.
Are those investments going similarly in the same direction? Is there an association of Sus, or is it solo operation?
We're going to come to that, because many are saying that, look, Su is not the only one. There are many such middlemen who are basically selling access to the person who calls the shot, so to speak.
The
So if
boss.
you want you the boss, if you want your business or you want your investment to be moved to the top of the pile, you come through me, I carry you to the man, right? We work out a deal where I get some. It was even said, Marvin, that look, the boss don't collect money directly. I felt as if I was watching one of those old mafia movies.
Yep.
That's the level to which we are, and this causing the question. I mean, you know, the boys on the street talking. What is Ali really doing there?
Who?
What is Ali's role? Do we what? So you must, as an individual, ask yourself, okay, so what am I doing here? Do I have any power? And if he had any sort of say in what goes on in the cabinet and in the government, he would have been able to say, look, he would have been able to reprimand. And I know that might be a stretch of people, because people really know what is happening.
Randy, here's my big concern. The people of Guyana have accepted this kind of behavior in public office for too long. This gentleman and perhaps other persons have grown accustomed to doing things outside of the norm, outside of the law, outside of the remit that is theirs by appointment.
Yes.
Usurping the authorities of others and so on. That it has become normal. But now that this mega corrupt release has come out there, this I imagine that there's more to come.
This is just the tip of the iceberg.
I imagine that there's more to come. And it is only now that the Guyanese society seem to be recognizing that this thing is horrible, because the cost of living is climbing, the employment opportunities are dwindling, the benefits from the national insurance scheme are being subject to all sorts of conversations. We know about the gentleman from Bat Settlement and what he was told. All of these things are happening. COVID hit us, the economy slowed down, lots of things happened. So people evidently had time to think.
Yeah.
And people were fired from their jobs, positions were made redundant. You are not seeing the average middle class Guyanese, if we still have a middle class, enjoying the comfort of the middle class. And you're seeing the working poor suffering daily. You read stories and you hear stories about people who now have to eat 2 meals per day from 3 because of the hardships. And you see the sugar industry really collapsing and crumbling to the ground. You see one sugar estate producing 66 tons of sugar for an entire crop. You see a reduced sugar target not being able to be attained by the Guyana Sugar Corporation, so that all these promises associated with bringing back the sugar industry to a certain place have all been exposed, because people have more time now to think.
Yes.
More time to investigatively look at these issues.
Yeah.
So there's a new approach now. The approach is, I don't know if bribery is a good word, but persons are being given money for no apparent reason.
How much of it, Marvin, is it a case of this is just a poorly kept secret? Some are saying that the kind of lax or, laissez-faire reaction to this is like people already knew that this was happening. And so they have decided to treat the Vice report of the mini documentary as, we know that. We know. It's like they're saying things that we know already. It's just that now it come out in public. And like you said, we have become accustomed to it. We've had 23 years under the PPP where this became the norm, right? They would have constantly and they systematically, I should say, taken down those guardrails to democracy. All of those checks and balances and those institutions that are supposed to keep them in check, keep them accountable, keep them transparent. they degraded them over the 23 years. There were attempts, right, and some successful attempts by the AP and UFC to put them back in place. And we see as soon as the PPP came back, they started to pull them away, because these are the things that will keep you accountable. These are the checks and balances. And so what we have now is a sort of cake shop setup where you have a sweetie stand where you have Jack Dio there selling sweetie, and you gotta come to him because he get all this sweetie. And so we have this pseudo government that I like to call. It's not really a government. And I point to, I am coming on this here. There was an interesting comment by Jack Dio when he was asked about something that was agreed in cabinet. He said, you don't go to cabinet meeting. And you don't go to cabinet meeting, but then you come on Thursdays and you rattle off all of these things that apparently you decided that you will do. But we have Ali and the rest of them running around pretending as if they pretending that there's a government. So this is not surprising to anybody. And how much of it, and I go back to that, how much of it is a case of, it's just a poorly kept secret?
I don't even know if it was a secret in the first place. I just know that it was produced and presented in a very profound way that would awaken the interest of any person, whether you knew that this thing was happening or not.
Yeah.
Because the manner in which it was presented clearly demonstrates that this is no superficial one-off occurrence. This is an almost institutionalized kind of behavior.
Yes.
Now, is it a coincidence that Sue lives next door? I don't know. Right? But I saw today a photograph on one of the social media platforms, and I don't know of the authenticity of the photograph.
Yeah.
Maybe you can explore it. But it was a picture of Mr. Jagdeo sitting at the desk, and the wall to the backdrop, there were 3 photographs. And the photograph of Mr. Jagdeo was highest, followed by Mr. Ali, who was a little bit lower, and Mr. Phillips, who was even lower. Now, the normal approach is that the picture of the president is at the highest.
At the highest, yes. Mounted highest, yes.
And the prime minister, who was the first vice president, his comes second. And of course, any other minister of government could be appointed a vice president. And where that is done, then you have to properly address the prime minister as prime minister and first vice president.
Right.
But this brought home to me with some impact the fact that those pictures and the way they were ordered on that wall is a reflection of the reality of the government of Guyana.
Yeah. Yeah.
Not only does Mr. Jagdeo usurp the authority of the other ministers and the heads of agency, but he also places himself above the executive president.
Yeah.
Now, that would cause you to realize that I don't go to cabinet is a very casual statement which affirms that I'm above the executive president, who is the chairman of the cabinet.
Yeah.
And those who are in parliament and those who follow the news recognize that the only time Mr. Jagdeo goes to the National Assembly is when there's a critical vote to be taken and he wants to ensure that whatever it is to be voted upon, that no vote is missing.
Yeah.
So what we have here is unprecedented, and it never should have happened. Here is a gentleman who said, I'm done with politics. I want nothing more to do with it. I am going to retire and enjoy the rest of my life in a quiet manner. And then he comes back and he superimposes himself on the president, on the cabinet.
How does Ali feel? How do you present yourself as the president of the country when it is obvious that you really don't have any power? That's the reality of the situation right now. And as we're on Jagdeo, You know, I was listening to Amanza Walton this year the other day, and she made a very interesting point about stripping away this.
The institutions are being stripped.
Right. That too. But she was more focused on Jack Dio and stripping away this veneer and this facade of him being this brilliant politician that is somehow the savior. And I asked the other day for just for example's sake, I said, point me in the direction of one major project, successful project that Jack Dio has overseen.
There's one.
What's one?
The rigging of the 2020 elections. That's the only one. That's the only one. There's no other.
Yeah. And you know, people struggle to find. Somebody said the Berbice Bridge. This is a man that was president for 12 years.
Yep, 12.
His administration was in power for 20-something, now 25 years.
Mm-hmm.
And you can't point me in the direction of one successful mega project, but the Berbice Bridge, which was a whole corruption in itself. But this man is walking around with a track record of failure. Skeldon Sugar Factory, the fiber optic cable, Amila Falls, right? What has happened with NIS is failure after failure after failure. And so we need for people to understand that this idea that Jack Dio is some sort of economic genius has not borne any fruits.
Mr. Jack Dio is a bully. That's what he is.
Show me the fruits.
Mr. Jack Dio is a bully. Any head of state who will cause the incarceration of a young person merely for showing a middle finger in the general direction of the head of state.
Yeah.
Such a person has serious issues. That's infantile behavior.
Yes.
That is when a bully is touched by something and feels that he needs to react.
Yeah.
Right? Now, when you look at that kind of behavior, you shudder to think about what is likely to befall persons who speak openly about this issue.
Yeah.
I mean, when this video was released, when it was being aired on Facebook, it was shut down. Why it was shut down? It was shut down because the People's Progressive Party did whatever they had to do and cause it to be rated or to be perceived in a certain light and in violation of some code of practice or the other,
Yes.
and shut down.
Yes.
Now there are rumors that there's a lobbying taking place for the acquisition of rights to the video.
Yeah.
So that it can be shut down. And it is not hard to believe, although we don't know whether it is true or not. It is not difficult to believe that this is a possibility. Because if you look at the elections petition issue, it is similar. Because here is a political party saying, look, the AP and UAFC tried to thief a whole country. That's the language they were using. And they rigged the election, and Mingo is a thief, and this body is a thief, and the other body, and proceeded to arrest and charge some persons. But when it is time for the elections petition to be heard and determined on its merit,
Yes.
you try every single obstacle that you can find to ensure that it is not heard and determined in a court of law on its own merit.
Yeah.
Look at this Vice News issue. Why do you want to shut it down if it is not true? Look at the elections petition issue. Why do you want to shut it down if you are confident that you are right? So this boils down to the attitude and behavior of a bully, a typical bully.
Yeah.
Right? I know that I wronged you. I know that I did something that is unacceptable, but I'm going to ensure that I continue to muscle my way forward so that Nobody will listen to this matter. Nobody will entertain it. Nobody will be able to determine it and pronounce upon it. And so the result of my bullyism is going to be left right here. It's not going to be opened for public scrutiny beyond this point. And that's where we are, and that's the government we have. So why is the Public Procurement Commission not installed? I mean, it is not appointed and commissioned for the simple reason that there's a fear that probing in to the operations of the government is going to cause not the exposure of corruption, but the profound exposure of specific instances of corruption, which could number in the thousands.
Hold that thought on transparency and accountability, because I want to go back to something that you brought up there. This petition and the COI. Now, on one hand, I just want to break it down to show the absurdity. On one hand, you are trying to throw out the petition from court. The petition which will investigate what happened in the election. That's what the petition will do. We will have a thorough investigation that is the decisions are binding in law. Now, instead of that, you want to parade and do some, this, as somebody termed it, a kangaroo court. And call the COI, which is inconsequential in the general scheme of things, because there is a petition. There is something there for us to go through what happened during the elections. A petition. Why are you fighting the petition to do something that has no bearing? What? So we have the COI and then what? And so it makes no sense. The people of Guyana are seeing through this madness. Why are you fighting the petition, but you're pushing for a COI? The petition has legal binding decisions that will come out of it, not the COI. So it makes no sense, and the people are smart enough to realize that. But let us move on to the issue that you brought up, and this is a very important one, because accountability is the enemy. Transparency is the enemy of the PPP.
But before you run there, on the same subject of
are we still on the COI?
COI business. It brings out another element, and that is the clear power struggle within the People's Progressive Party.
Oh, yes.
Mr. Ali said early on, perhaps on the day of his inauguration,
COI,
he said, I'll appoint a commission of inquiry into this election issue. Coincidentally, within recent times, the chair of the Guyana Elections Commission decided that the commission is not a court of law,
right,
and therefore cannot inquire
into
this election.
Yes.
So this retired jurist is making the point that only a court of law can properly inquire into the elections. And then Mr. Jagdeo says, there'll be no commission of inquiry, it's a waste of time. The people who have been charged will not cooperate with this commission of inquiry, and it's going to be a waste of time. You know, and GCOM is not going to do it. I don't know how he decides that GCOM, an independent constitutional body, wouldn't do it. And then Mr. Ali went to this Enmore Martyrs event, and he spoke about everything that he wanted to speak about, even belittling the President General of the Guyana Sugar Workers Union.
Yes.
And then almost as an afterthought, you know, when everybody's comfortable that he has completed his mission and there's nothing to worry about, he says, boom, commission of inquiry before dawn Tuesday morning.
Who is in charge, really?
So you get a sense that Mr. Ali could not have said that early on, or he may have had to apologize before the event was finished. So he waited for the last moment. And he didn't say that, you know, before the sun sets on Tuesday, or by high noon, as they used to say in the cowboy movies. He said before dawn. before dawn suggests clandestine operation. That during the night we will sit down and we will fashion this thing together and put it and bring it out before daybreak. So while you're sleeping, we're working, basically.
Yes.
And more than that, Mr. Jagdeo comes back after Mr. Ali leaves the country to say we're going to have this commission of inquiry. So there's a tussle for power. Ali seems to be the man who is trying to assert himself as the executive president.
Yep.
And, you know, karma is a hell of a thing. I think Mr. Jagdeo is right now worried about whether Mr. Ali would say, but you are an ordinary citizen and I appointed you to my cabinet. You have no right to speak on these matters. And so
he has that power.
He has the power to do it. So there is this struggle that's happening there. And I said before in the pages of the newspaper that all of these things amount to distractions. And all of them happen around the same time as the exposition done by Vice News.
Yep.
So this COI is designed to take away the attention of the Guyanese people from what's happening with Sugate. And in the hope that the loyal supporters of the People's Progressive Party will not pay attention to what is being said about Sugate. And in addition to that, they're now going to feed red meat to their core supporters by saying, look, we're going to suspend 8 of them from APNU AFC from the parliament, and we're going to show you we're powerful. And we're going to put them in the place, you know? So all these distractions are happening to get the PPP supporters happy and comfortable that everybody them a do the thing, man, you know? But in the meantime, they're hoping for natural death to this whole big Sugate issue. But Jagdeo has to resign and allow a proper independent international investigation into these allegations. It is a national embarrassment. It is a national indictment on this country's governance and government.
Yeah.
And you have to make room. You cannot remain in a position of influence, and not just influence in the case of Mr. Jagdeo, but absolute dominance over the administration and everything that happens while an investigation is being done.
Yeah.
Nobody is pronouncing on your guilt, Mr. Jagdeo. People are talking about allegations which have been made against you. And for lesser reasons, persons have stepped aside and allowed for investigations to take place. And if they have been vindicated, they will return to their jobs and everybody go back to normal.
Yeah.
That's what this is. This is not conviction of an innocent person. This is about, or a guilty person. This is about the presumption of innocence, the call for an investigation, and speaking to the issue of what this does to already fragile governance systems in this country.
And I want to add to what you said about the distraction. The 19th of July, we're supposed to hear arguments in that first part of the petition is, and I think this whole COI will be sort of like a counter to what you'll be hearing there. And as you said, a distraction from Sugate. But I promise you, our viewers, and I promise the supporters of the PPP and the PPP government that Sugate isn't going anywhere. We will be talking about this for a while. We'll be doing everything that we have to do to ensure that people see beyond the veil, this facade. You know, the government runs about one Guyana, we're giving out hampers, we're giving out money, this facade that you're putting up whilst you're doing the gods behind the curtains. But we will continue to pull back the curtain so that you can see what is happening. As we talk about this, and not to come off of Sugate, I think I have a clip that I want to play, right? I want to play that clip, and I want you to pay close attention to the hypocrisy. Very close attention to the words being said. Let us run with the clip. This is Mr. Jagdeo in his own words talking about the award of contracts and mega projects.
You don't have to meet the head of the office every time because he's busy too. You deposit your proposal, say, I'm interested. You have staff there. You meet with the staff. People walk in. The foreigners can come and do this every day, and they're moving ahead with our projects, their projects, and they go through that mechanism. How could a person not, because he doesn't meet the head of the office, not even deposit his proposal and say, here is what I want to do. Can you advise me? You know, and he has a substantial sum of money. But we have to get real too. You know, sometimes our people, they need personalized attention. What we're trying to do is to make the system work. So you don't have to go and see individuals to get help. You can get help from the system. That is the only way it becomes sustainable in the long run. It's not capricious. And then you can't say, oh, or somebody wants money to get my proposal approved because that's the next thing that comes along. So the people have to.
I want to note our viewers. The man said you have to make the system work. You can't go to one person. How can you have to go to one person? This is the same man who investors were taken to through Sue. And Sue telling them, look, if you want to get anything done, this is the man that you got to use the boss. Is a mafioso kind of thing we run in. We run in a little, you know, a little gang. We all go to the boss, and the boss don't collect money direct, do. Right? This is the same man. Listen to the hypocrisy. I want us to play it one more time. I want you to listen to what he was suggesting with a straight face.
Before you play it back, note carefully when he stuttered, he said, our proposal.
Our projects.
Our projects. And then he corrected himself, which could be an innocent slip. We all make those slips. But what if it was not?
Yeah. Let's listen to it again. Listen to the hypocrisy, folks.
You have an office. You don't have to meet the head of the office every time because he's busy too. You deposit your proposal, say, I'm interested. You have staff there. You meet with the staff. People walk in. The foreigners can come and do this every day, and they're moving ahead with our projects, their projects, and they go through that mechanism. How could a person not, because he doesn't meet the head of the office, not even deposit his proposal and say, here is what I want to do. Can you advise me? You know, and he has a substantial sum of money. But we have to get real too. You know, sometimes our people, they need personalized attention. What we're trying to do is to make the system work. So you don't have to go and see individuals to get help. You can get help from the system. That is the only.
So trying to make the system work so you don't have to go to individuals. This is a few months before, you know, this is recent. And then we see Sue taking him to this man. And the worrying thing, like you said, is the exchange of money for this sort of processing fee, as they call it.
That's in the recording.
Processing fee.
And I note that a lot of people are holding on to this little, I think there were 4 words. His hands are clean. But if you listen and you put it in context,
yes,
what is meant is that this man is saying, look, this gentleman doesn't collect this thing himself. You pass it to me, and I get something out of it. Right? So, I mean, you have to take things in context. You just can't plug a couple of words out and run with it. And
you have to understand, this man pays rent. So we don't know in what form this money getting to Jagdeo. We don't know what form. We don't know what form. The reality is that the veil was pulled back and we saw what happened. Right? We heard it from the mouth of Sue. He said, this is the man. Right? We split up the money.
What is clear to me is that neither Sue nor the boss knew that they were recorded because the boss made it clear. Look, I can be the bully that I am and that I'm known to be, and I'm going to put this interview out there. And by the time they put out a report, there'll be stale news. So, everybody pay attention to this, and I'll defend this.
Yeah.
And then somebody gets to sue and he issues a statement. He says, I never said these things. I don't know what these people are talking about.
Yeah.
And issue done, closed.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
That was the case.
But then when the report comes out, when the video comes out, the evidence that was not prior produced was now produced, that there was a person presenting himself as an investor, that the reporter was actually posing as a secretary, and that they were all there, and that these things were actually recorded.
Yeah.
The fact that the lady, or the producer for that matter, put just a little clip. Jagdeo said, I think it was 1.5 minutes. I don't know. I didn't time it. Obviously, he paid very keen attention to it. It means that there is a hell of a lot more that is recorded. There are documents there. And I mean, this is not something that you can run from or hide from. It is there. It is all over the world.
Yeah.
Why are we, some of us in this country, hiding, burying our heads in the sand and saying, I mean, I'm not surprised that anybody from the private sector commission comes out and make a statement. I expect one particular gentleman to make a statement, but he hasn't yet. He's perhaps waiting his turn. I'm not surprised that certain people have made statements in support of the gentleman. There's nothing wrong with supporting Mr. Jagdeo. There's everything wrong with condoning this approach to say, I'm going to bully my way and stay in office and control all the levels of power to ensure that this investigation doesn't happen. That is what everything is wrong with. Nobody is saying this gentleman is guilty of anything. We're saying these are allegations that have been put out there. And we want, as a nation, to have the investigation done into these allegations. It is a country's image that is at stake. I don't care about Mr. Jagdeo's image. That is inconsequential to me.
Yeah.
I care and I'm deeply concerned by the image of my country that is presented out there. That anybody can walk into my country with a couple of $1,000 US and pay to somebody in somebody's house and get access to my patrimony that I can't as a citizen.
Yes.
That is what my problem is.
That's the issue. Because the institutions and the infrastructure, well, they were ripped down. So we don't have any
insulation. No.
It's just come to me. I could give you this. I could give you that. And that is what people have been saying while now. The man behaves in Guyana is his. It was given to him. So he could give out pieces as all he wants.
Look, Randy, let's break this down to a simple example. The indigenous children living in the dormitory at Waramadan.
Yes.
DCC is a Fox Secondary School. They had to eat boiled rice with salt for several days. Nobody can deny that because we have recorded testimonies to bring out, just like Sugate, to prove that this happened and why it happened. The regional education officer made it clear that the fault lies at the feet of the National Procurement and Tender Administration Board, who had not yet awarded a contract to anybody to supply dietaries to the school.
Wow.
That officer also made it clear that the National Procurement and Tender Administration Board had not issued contracts to anyone to supply fuel to that school. So the generating sets, which were down for 2 months and subsequently repaired, now had no fuel. So being repaired meant nothing.
Yeah.
Now, is this a case where the National Procurement and Tender Administration Board said, well, Jagdeo doing the work, so why must we? Why perhaps the school and the regional education officials don't go to Jagdeo and let he give them the award for the contract because we are not serving any purpose? What if that is the position? What if that is the position? And what if that position spreads throughout other institutions that are required to insulate us as citizens from fraud, from corruption, from nepotism? and all these other negatives.
Yeah.
And everybody down tools and say, look, it happens in offices. Look, go to he. He know everything. Go to she more powerful than all of we.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And people down tools and say, look, go to the boss.
Yeah.
What happens then? What becomes
It's a
of our institutions that are geared constitutionally to protect us? What happens then? So this is not just about allegations about Mr. Jagdeo. These are allegations that go to the heart of the institutions of state that are put there for particular purposes.
Mm-hmm.
Those purposes are defined in the Constitution and defined in the laws. If they don't work, the Guyanese people suffer. The treasury hemorrhages. The patrimony goes to where it ought not to go. Our natural resources are depleted and our people do not benefit. So this is not about Jagdeo. This is about the future of our country, the future of our children yet unborn. What are they going to benefit when they come into this world? And $9,000 US debt to Exxon? Or riches untold? We have to fix this, and we have to fix this now.
They get $19,000 school voucher every term. Don't worry.
But that's the other problem. You bully your way, you destroy institutions, you take command and control over our patrimony like you have transport over it.
Mm-hmm.
And then what do? You bribe the citizens of the country with all sorts of handouts.
Yeah.
And the more they are closer to you, the more you are satisfied that they will vote for your political party, the more money they get.
Mm-hmm.
So a farmer gets 200,000, a Gaisuko worker gets 250,000, a fisherman gets 150,000, and the people who are both farmers and fishermen get $25,000 because they're indigenous people and live in the riverine communities. And you can go and you can tell them anything, and you think you can fool them. Those days are done.
Yeah. I want to, as we segue into this idea of what is happening on the ground with people. I know you spoke about the school, and we'll talk about that as we look at our time. But the question is, and folks, if you're now joining us, we encourage you to share the live stream. Don't be afraid to share the live stream. As we will welcome in a guest in just a second as we talk economics. But share the live stream. We're talking with Mr. Marvin Williams, executive member of the PNCR. And we're having a very open discussion here on the state of affairs of the country in light of what was revealed with the Vice mini documentary. And I want to point out something. You know, people always say, and it's in law enforcement, they look for certain signs if somebody is guilty, how they're acting, the things that they're doing, why they're doing these things. You ask those questions, and these are signs of guilt. Signs of guilt. Now, the PPP has made it their job, their duty, to defunct some of these institutions and guardrails that would ensure transparency and accountability, public procurement. We look in Parliament, right? They have tried their best to stifle and stymie the work of the Public Accounts Committee. Public procurement, they have done everything possible not to allow the people of Guyana to see what is happening with the finances and how they're spending the money. Why is that? Why are they behaving guilty? That's the question.
You know, Kemraj Ramjatan, to his credit, coined the phrase. Yeah, in fact, it's a word. He coined a word, actually. He said, he used the word
control freakism.
Yes, freakism. Yes, freakism. That phrase, that catchphrase. Control freakism. And when you're a bully, you leave nothing to to chance. You leave nothing to question.
Yeah.
You want to control everything. You want to direct everything. You want to be in charge, absolutely in charge of everything. Anybody steps out the line, you punish them as an example to others. Like Mark Benshop was put in solitary confinement after having been charged for treason. And then after 5 years, he was told that, I hope you have mended your ways and you now pardon. You don't pardon people who have not been convicted. But bullies would behave in this way.
Yeah.
And of course, the Monroe family and so on, who suffered a similar fate. So, and on the other hand, Mr. Granger was threatened. There was this issue that came up, and nothing came of it.
Yeah.
Nothing came of it. So people grew accustomed between 2015 and 2020 to a better quality of governance, to more probity in public office, to more disciplined conduct of elected officials and officers.
So we gone back to cowboy tongue.
And so because we've gone back to the cowboy tongue, the glaring nature of the cowboy behavior pitched against
what was
the more tempered and conservative kind of government that you had on for the previous 5 years or so on, makes the cowboyism more pronounced.
Jarring. It is.
So that helps to enlighten people to understand that, well, you know, what we had grown accustomed to from 92 to 2015 was really not good for us.
And you saw that movement towards good governance, right? And a civil, organized bureaucracy that worked for the people. Now, I don't know what we have. And I want to segue into some economics here as we're going to welcome economist Elson Lowe to our program as we talk about some bread and butter issues to finish up our program this evening. We're going to talk about matters that affect your pocket. Folks, we know what is happening. As my colleague Sherrod Duncan would say, things tight. Things tight. Gas prices up. Food prices up. I've heard today that the minibus fares are up. The other day, the taxi drivers in region, I think it's region 5 or 6, they were protesting the gas prices. You go into the supermarket. The government has not addressed this issue coming out of COVID and into a post-COVID society. This issue of prices. They, throughout this half-hearted measure where they took off some of the duties in hopes that this will trickle down to the actual consumer, of course it has not. But the Guyanese people are suffering. As that is happening, as all the prices are going up, this government has blatantly refused to give public servants any significant increase in their salaries. But this is a government that cares, apparently. But what do they care about? That's the question. What they care about? To help us unpack some more of these economic issues, I'm going to welcome in Elson to our program. Elson, good evening to you. How are you doing?
Good evening. Good evening. Good to be on. We haven't caught up for a minute, so it's good to see you.
Yeah, I know. I don't like my lighting. I look a little dark. I know I'm dark, but I ain't this dark. Well, thank you very much for joining us. Elson, we just started talking there about the constant, and it's not even a creeping anymore. It is, it's almost unbelievable. When you go to the supermarket, the prices that you're seeing. When you go to the gas station, the prices that you're seeing. And the lack of alacrity in terms of government looking into this and trying to help the average man on the ground. Your thoughts on that as you know, we try to change the subject a little bit this evening.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, as you don't need us to tell you, viewers, that you've got a situation where you're facing some of the highest prices, food prices, gas prices on record, where you're seeing inflation, the rise in these prices happening faster than we've seen. really in living memory. I think for about 40 years, these records keep getting smashed as to the speed at which prices are going up. And that's not just in Guyana, that's across the world. But the difference is Guyana, I'll gently remind you, viewers, is the fastest growing country in the world and has been one of the fastest, if not the fastest, for the last few years. So we should be doing well. You should be seeing the progress and things get better, but rather you've been seeing because of cost of living and because of the government's poor response and lack really of any kind of a proper response. You've actually been seeing things get worse, standards of living fall, and people really feel the squeeze. And this is feeling the squeeze when it comes to food prices, feeling the squeeze at the pump, feeling the squeeze in a wide range of areas. And when you talk about food, it's not just locally produced foods or foreign produced foods, it's both. You've
Yeah.
seen flour, that price go up through the roof. That's because of the wheat shortage due to the war in Ukraine. But the government's only response to that is we should grow wheat here in Guyana. I wonder how that's coming along. I haven't heard anything about that. It's been several months, and obviously, even in the best case scenario, it's not till next year that you'll get any wheat crop. It's not clear that that wheat crop would actually be cheaper than the wheat that we're importing. So these are the types of initiatives the government's putting out, which are I would describe them as comical,
Yeah.
absolutely comical initiatives. That's the first. The second is. We've talked a lot about the fact that the government has put less than 1% of the national budget towards mitigating cost of living, these cost of living issues. Now, just to give your viewers some perspective on this, just to help your viewers to realize just how bad it is. Now, first of all, putting less than 1% is on the face of it terrible, terrible. But for you to have the largest budget in the country's history be passed, a budget that is nearly 50% bigger than the previous one, and you only put a little afterthought of 1% towards cost of living, is really unbelievable. And on top of that, it's not to say that, oh, we've just had inflation last year and this year it's cooled off. It's gotten worse, much worse this year, and they have not gone back to Parliament to pass a supplementary budget to bolster the relief measures. Rather, we're operating with the same measures we had in that original budget. Viewers, I'd ask you this question. I pose this question to you. The government formulated that budget before the war in Ukraine. That means that that budget did not contemplate a war in Ukraine and the impact that
Wheat.
that has had on prices of food and prices on gas. That means that the government is not taking any new action to address this crisis, any action that it would not otherwise have taken. There's nothing new or special to address the crisis. It's just the same stuff they were going to do anyway. These were all initiatives they were going to do anyway. These small scale initiatives were all initiatives they were going to do anyway. They haven't done anything more to actually address the changed circumstances. Of course, Randy, you know that we from the PNCR side have put forward several things to help to lower the cost of living, whether that is grants to farmers to help them to expand production and so on, so they can have benefit from economies of scale, benefit from bigger production, drive down their costs and so on. But also, we've talked about a negative excise tax, which essentially will lower the price of gasoline, lower the price at the pump, and keep the price from going above a certain level if we see oil prices rise over the course of the year. There's considerable anxiety in the international economics community as well as the local one about a higher oil price. Now, there's two reasons for that, and I want your viewers to keep an eye on these things. One of the things that I try to say to the viewers nowadays is that you should always, every day, you should check that oil price. You should check that oil price. You're an oil producing country, and a lot of our economy is connected now to that oil price. We've got to keep an eye on it. And that oil price, there's a considerable worry that that is going to go to 150, and that it may go even further than that. So you're talking about the highest prices, some of the highest price. Yeah, 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 you're right. You're right to laugh because
Yeah.
that would be crazy.
Going to
But
be interesting.
yeah, yeah, that's the anxiety right now that's heading there. And the closer you get to 130, the more economists start to say you might see a recession, But if you get to 150, they're saying that a recession is almost 100% chance. It's highly likely. Now, what
Mhm.
that means for you here in Guyana is this. In the non-oil economy, that's to say all the sectors that are not directly connected to oil, you might see a contraction in the economy. You might see
Yeah.
people lose their jobs, people stop spending, and so on. And I know that viewers may say to themselves, we're booming, the oil is booming, all these oil companies coming in, that can't happen. But I saw someone recently mention if this gasoline price gets up to $300, I think it's $300 a liter. That if it goes there, it's like 270 something right now. If it goes up to 300, the person said, I'm gonna stop going out. I'm gonna stay home. I'm not gonna be going to movies and hanging out and so on. I'm gonna take it light and stay home. That what he's describing there, that's essentially what happens in a recession.
Mhm.
People stop being active, stop going out, stop spending money. When they stop spending money, what happens there? The movie theater makes less money, right?
Mhm.
Yeah, right. So the movie theater now making less money. What they have to do, they have to let go of some workers. When they let go of those workers now are not spending in the economy, right? Money is not circulating. So let's say the baker shop now, the baker shop that is next door, that these workers buy goods from, they have to let go of some of their workers. And it goes on, and that's how you see you end up in a difficult position. So we are saying that first of all, we need to bring down this gas price. That's what the PNC is saying. It needs to be brought into a reasonable level. But second of all, that there's a real danger from allowing this thing to go further and further up because people will start cutting back. Excuse me, people will start cutting back on their actual expenditure.
Mhm.
And when you say, oh well, that's just gas, maybe other things won't be affected. Randy, I have to ask, isn't it that the greens that is grown on the farm has to be transported to the market
Exactly.
in a vehicle
Exactly.
using gas? I mean, that the prices of greens will go up as well.
Yeah.
So us keeping the oil price from going above a certain level will not only have the benefit, well, we're talking about three benefits here. The first is a direct benefit to you, which is that you pay less for your gas, you as a consumer. The second benefit is that we're fighting off the possibility or the risk of job losses and a slowdown in the non oil economy.
Yeah.
And the third is that we're fighting the cost of living crisis by directly addressing some of the things that are forcing prices to go up and that can force prices to go up even further. So that will reduce the cost of living crisis, reduce inflation. So this is a policy that has multiple tiers to it and it has multiple benefits to it. And of course, just to close off this point, I take
Mhm.
this opportunity to. Did you know that Guyana produces oil? Are you aware that Guyana produces oil? Because as a result of that, we're benefiting so much from
From
the higher
higher oil prices. Yeah.
rate. So if we're
Mhm.
benefiting, why are we not passing that some of that benefit on to the citizens, but allowing citizens to punish? That
Yeah.
seems to me to be totally wrong-headed, man.
That is a good point for me to come back, and that's a good place for me to bring back Marvin into this discussion because Marvin, if let's just say I'm talking to you now as an average Guyanese. You're the man on the street. You're the man connected with the people, right? So how how do Guyanese citizens, how are they supposed to understand what is happening here? Because they look at television. If we can bring more back on, they look at television and they see mega structures, hotels, big deals signing, big monies, big this, all of these things. It seems as though everybody is running together to get piece of this pie, and everybody seems to be getting rich, and this wealth gap seems to be growing, but they can't afford to buy the greens in the market. How are Guyanese supposed to deal with that? How are you dealing with it?
Well, Jagdeo set the stage by saying that people are coming to Guyana to make money. What is known and established is that 5% of Guyana controls the wealth of this
Mhm.
country.
Mhm.
The other 95, we struggle to survive. So when Jagdeo speaks of trickle down economics, he's really targeting his friends,
Yeah.
circle of friends.
Mhm.
So the rest of us are basically scapegoats in this whole process. That
Yeah.
look, these wealthy guys are going to get this money, and the benefits are going to trickle down to you fellas down at the bottom there.
Mhm.
But it doesn't happen. What else, and I believe may wish to examine carefully, is where does the money go?
Yeah. Because if the
Because-
schools ain't getting the money,
No, I'm not going there.
mhm.
I'm talking about the 5% that controls the wealth.
Oh,
Where does the money they make, where does that money go? Does it stay here to help develop Guyana?
mhm.
Or does it go abroad to invest in some other set of businesses?
I'm offshore account.
But to come to your question specifically,
How deep?
anybody who lives in the region 3, for example, will know that from the time the Iflot sugar estate ground to a halt some months ago,
Mhm.
the sales of greens at the Leonora market, the sales of greens at the Perica market and the Willem market and so on have reduced
Mhm.
because less money is there. People are feeling the squeeze. Businesses are sending home employees. All right. Now, when you get a situation where people already do not have jobs and more people are joining them on the breadline,
Mhm.
and select persons are getting part-time jobs or temporary jobs, as they call it, in particular areas and so on.
Mhm.
What are you doing to the psyche of your people? There's a school of thought that says to control a people, you must first starve them. Is this what is happening in Guyana right now?
Yeah.
Because the sugar workers are not at fault for not having work to do at IFLOT.
Mhm.
It is the administration of the sugar estate, and by extension, the government of Guyana, which is the principal of the Guyana Sugar Corporation, that has failed to make it possible for them to work. Consequently, they've denied them an income.
Mhm.
Now, when you have a situation such as that and people are hungry, I mean, I live in Iflot.
Mhm.
I got a mango tree, friend, and I can't get a mango from the tree,
Yeah.
at least not a ripe one, because the fellas are coming and they're stealing it to sell. Now, when you start there and you look into somebody's yard and there are other things in that yard that you believe you can sell to make a living, that's where we're going. The rich is getting richer, the
Yeah.
poor are getting poorer, the struggle is getting more difficult, the belts are being tightened, people are eating less, people are not able to afford a proper meal. So it's getting extremely difficult, and there are a particular set of circumstances that can flow from that, which are not necessarily economic alone.
Yeah, social. So, and that's the thing I'm asking.
Right.
Now, these same Guyanese who are struggling right now can't see their way forward are putting on their televisions in the evening, and you see hands being, we shaking hands with investors and this big building and this hotel and this project and that project, and they are wondering what Guyana are they living in?
It is very alarming. It is very difficult. But this kind of things that you're referring to, potentially apart from regular petty thefts,
Yeah.
they're moving into domestic violence. They're moving into violence against children because people are losing control of their thought processes and the frustrations are getting the better of them. Recently, there's a situation where policemen demanded $40,000 to release a man who had not committed an offense.
Yeah.
Right?
It's going to get worse.
So if the people who you are paying through your tax dollars, if you have a job, I don't have a job, so I'm not paying taxes at the moment. And you do that, and then these people who are supposed to serve and protect you are now robbing you while in a uniform issued by the state because of the difficult circumstances that Elson has just explained. Think about what greater danger lies ahead for us. There's got to be an approach that says there must be an equality in the distribution of the wealth of the state to the people of this country.
Yeah.
There's got to be an approach that says let's move away from this thing about looking after our own and punishing the others and then giving them a little handout coming close to the end so we can buy their support. You see, this is where the PPP is getting away with. They're essentially suffering people and then subjecting them to all kinds of difficulties. And when election time comes around, then they come and they bring goodies. And that tells you that they have sensed this economy is out of control. They have sensed that Sugate has put governance out of control. Our institutions of governance have been trampled upon and destroyed. Our constitution is being ignored in some ways. For example, the appointment of Chancellor and Chief Justice and the constitutional commissions and so on. And they know that if this appeal is heard and determined, or when this appeal is heard and determined, that the real election thief is going to be identified. So they don't want to wait for no court ruling. They put the COI in place to gerrymander some situations and to cast some doubt on other processes that are taking place. And from the time they sense that this court matter is going haywire, they know that the elections are going to be vitiated. And so they are right now preparing for regional and national elections. And they know that the runaway train of inflation that Elson has just described in very, very simple terms, so everyone can understand, that is going to be the death knell of the People's Progressive Party in government. And they don't want to wait for that. They want to hurry up to hit two birds with one stone. They hope that this internal power struggle can be put to bed, and they hope that the vote procurement strategy that they've rolled out, will buy enough votes to keep them there. That's what they believe.
Right.
But Guyanese are not foolish.
Yeah. I think we can safely say that Guyanese are very smart and they see through these issues. I never like to end the program without talking about some solutions. And I know you spoke about equity in distribution of resources. And I'll bring Elson back here. And as we wrap up and talk about some solutions, Elson, how do we deal with this growing wealth gap? How do we guard against what essentially happened in Trinidad and a number of those countries who found wealth through oil, and saw the rise in social issues and crime and that growing wealth gap? What are some of the solutions as we wrap up here and we talk about the way forward?
Well, the first thing I would say is that you have to acknowledge that inequality is an important issue, that fighting inequality is an important issue. And viewers, the PPP has not listed reducing inequality or maintaining some level of equality in this country as an issue of focus for them. That's not a national development issue they've listed as a priority. So that's the first thing. That's not even on their radar. That's the first thing. The second thing is, we in the PNCR put forward a livable income framework, where first of all there will be salary top-ups for those of you who are working to ensure that you are above the poverty line. Of course, we will determine what is the level that we want everyone to be living above when we're in office. The next thing is that we've talked about reducing the income tax on lower income earners. And of course, we've talked also about things like the University of Guyana being free and there being stipends for students to assist them in their education. The goal of a lot of these programs is to fight the inequality issue, is to ensure that we don't have people, first of all, that their lives are not going backwards, which is what's happening right now, where things are getting worse rather than better. But second of all, to ensure that everyone is able, and especially Guyana's young people even, to benefit from the gains of our economy, to benefit from the growth of our economy, to benefit from the prosperity that we want to see in this country, and that we want to see sustainably in the country. These are our mechanisms, these are measures that we've put forward because we believe that they'll have a huge impact on the future. We've also indicated that we want to tie, certain outcomes to these measures, such as making sure that school children finish their high school education, such as making sure that people get medicals every year when they're over 40. The reason being, there are huge gains to the economy to be made from us moving together in the spirit of partnership towards a better, stronger, more fair economy. And that is in part us having everyone get an opportunity to get an education so they can get a high paying job. We're not just looking to give you a 40,000 and that's the end of the day. We're looking for everyone to get access to a high paying job as the economy develops. And the second is, of course, that we want to ensure that we have the best possible health care and so on for people so that they can be productive, so that they can live comfortable lives. So there are solutions that have been put forward by the PNCR, and there are more things that we're going to throw out as we get closer and closer to that election, which may be, we'll see when it is. It's likely to be sooner than rather than later, but we're going to continue to throw these things out. But what we want viewers to understand is that we recognize that there's a serious inequality issue in this country and that it is getting more serious. It is becoming more and more of an issue. Who would have thought? Who would have thought that in the first few years of Guyana's oil production, rather than things getting better, rather than inequality falling, it's actually risen. Inequality has actually risen over the course of this time period. And I'll give you your viewers a metric or a way to understand this. Wealthy people in this country tend to own stock. They tend to own stock. Now, the stock market in Guyana, which is the ownership of companies in Guyana, that has gone up, 5 times over in the past few years. 5 times over. House prices have gone up, sometimes double, some triple, over only a few years. But if you're a Sophia, you're living on the dam, you don't have a house to your name, you don't have certainly any stock to your name, you barely got a few dollars and your money is losing value, your few dollars every day. What is happening is that inequality is becoming far worse very, very quickly. Very quickly, it's becoming far worse. We will not allow this to happen. We should all be sharing from the gains of our economy. And we believe that through sharing collectively in these gains, we will have a more robust economy. We will have a more sustainable economy. We'll have higher levels of overall growth. That is what we believe. If we continue with this, a cash run here, cash run there structure, which is no proper order to it, no real understanding of trying to get some positive outcomes here, all that's going to happen is that the country will be relatively, poverty will remain a serious issue. People will still not have access to jobs and so on. I mean, which Guyanese citizen would prefer to get a cash grant in the hand than to be able to get access to a high paying job in the oil sector? There's nobody that would prefer to get cash grant and that you want to get a high paying job so that every month, you're making bank.
Yep.
This cash
Yep.
grant situation is a joke, and Guyanese, I think, are wise to it. And we'll continue to educate them about the important changes to our economy that we need to make, that the PNCR has policies to make, which will lead to a more prosperous future for all of us.
Yeah. Thank you for that, Elson. And we'll delve into this cash grant economy in another program. But I want to say, you asked the question, who knew? Anybody that understands how the PVP works and their macroeconomic thinking could have said to them, look, we know that this is going to happen because these policies that you hope will trickle down to the people does not work. Elson, thank you very much for joining us this evening. Always interesting to hear your thoughts on these economic issues. We enjoy the rest of the evening, and very sharp with the glasses, I must say. Very sharp.
Thank you. I thought I'd give you a different look for so. Thanks for having me on. I hope that your viewers were able to get some interesting insights out of this conversation. And I leave them with this thought. You keep an eye on that oil price. You keep an eye on that because this country is growing. Money is being made. Are you benefiting? That's the question.
All right. Thank you very much, Elson Lowe, economist, and of course, member of the PNCR. And we're back, and we're going to wrap up with Mr. Marvin Wilson. Marvin, I'll allow you to your final thoughts on the way forward. We're in the part of our program where we talk about solutions. We talk about what has to be done. Before you say anything, there's someone who always says to me, there ain't gonna be any solution unless the PP move.
Well, that's the only solution. That's my line. But I want to make this point and put this matter to bed before we go. Every time there's a program being aired, there are these folks who come on in the comments and speak about the APN UAFC thieving the 18 million US signing bonus. Look,
yes,
viewers,
deal with it.
look, viewers. The 18 million US dollars signing bonus was placed in a government of Guyana bank account, an interest earning bank account. The money was put there to ensure that it doesn't lie idle, that it earns interest and it grows. By the time the government of Guyana is ready to utilize it for the purposes intended, part of which had to do with the Venezuela border case before the International Court of Justice. But the money was not stolen. Do not listen to people who tell you the money was stolen. It was not stolen. Ask your leaders when you meet with them and they come to the bottom house meetings and they tell you the lies that they generally tell you. Ask them, is it not true that Minister Winston Jordan opened a bank account which bears and earns interest and put the 18 million US dollars there until it was ready to be utilized? It was put into the normal accounting channels.
Yeah.
That's the first thing.
Yeah.
Now, the only way forward that I see here, my brother, is that Mr. Jagdeo must quietly step into a corner, removed from public office, and allow an independent, international, impartial inquiry, investigation, call it what you will, into the allegations that have been raised by Vice News. Let us put our country first. This report is damaging to our country's image. It tells the world that Guyana is open for business and that one man has essentially put under his feet all of the state institutions that have been put there to insulate us and our resources from corrupt practices. And so the only way forward is for Mr. Jagdeo to resign, step out, step away from public office and allow this investigation to take place. And if Mr. Jagdeo doesn't do that, the executive president of the Cooperative Republic of Guyana must cause him to be removed from public office pending the outcome of the investigation. If you did no wrong, you will be cleared by such an investigation. Let us strengthen the institutions of this state. Let us appoint the Public Procurement Commission. Let us safeguard the integrity of the National Procurement and Tender Administration Board. Let us ensure that Go Invest remains or becomes once again the center of investment for this country, and that all of the rules are followed, and that whatever wrong was done to the Public Accounts Committee is remedied post haste. And this thing about victimization and witch hunting or members of parliament and bringing a motion to the National Assembly the next sitting to essentially remove them temporarily from the office of members of parliament, suspend them, call it back, recall that nonsense. What Mr. Jagdeo has done, allegedly, according to Vice News, is enough for him to be removed from the National Assembly. It is grave, it is ugly, and it puts our entire country in a bad light. So talk all you want about the behavior of our members of parliament. Some might believe that it was justifiable. I do. Others may believe that it was not. But if you're going to bypass the opposition or attempt to bypass the opposition with legislation as important as the Natural Resource Fund legislation,
yes,
I believe that the opposition MPs were justified in taking the measures that they took or attempted to take in an effort to derail the bullyism of the People's Progressive Party, Civic. And so leave our MPs alone and cause Mr. Jagdeo to be removed from public office, including the National Assembly, so that Guyana can breathe, the investigation can go out there, and the rest of the world can know the absolute truth about these issues.
Yes. And unfortunately for the PPP, we will not cease in bringing these matters to light. We will not just sweep it under the carpet. We will not forget about what has happened and pretend like some in government and some in around the country pretend as if Jagdeo has done nothing. Folks, that is our time this evening. It was a pleasure having this conversation with you, Mr. Williams. Of course, thank you very much to Elson Lowe for joining us this evening. Thank you very much for being a part of the program as we continue to unbox and unpack and investigate all that is happening in our country as we move towards a better Guyana. My name is Randolph Critchlow. I want to say thank you very much on behalf of the team here at A Nation Watch. Do enjoy the rest of the evening. And remember, as always, let's continue to work together for national development. Do enjoy the rest of the evening.